My name is Randy Guttenberg. I'm the superintendent for Waunakee Community School District. Tonight, I have a number of panelists who are joining me because I know we'll have some questions that I'll be answering towards the end of our webinar this evening. Annie Blackburn is our communication specialist, so thank you for helping to coordinate all of these type of events, Annie. It's greatly appreciated. Tim Schell and Amy Johnson from our curriculum department are also joining me as panelists and will be there to assist with some of our questions that may come up with regards to K-12 instructional components. Kurt Ely is our Director of Student Services. He's been very involved with our operational pieces and particularly with navigating many of our COVID protocols in the district. And thank you to Angie Ramos for being here tonight. She is going to be interpreting for our Spanish-speaking family, so greatly appreciated. And the wonders of technology are allowing her to do so. So I'm very happy for that. Tonight, what I want to do is just first of all take just a moment to talk about really where we are as far as our agenda. We'll talk a little bit about our purpose and kind of how we'll operate this evening. I want to talk for just a few minutes about our community landscape with regards to some things that are just prevalent within our community as we kind of move forward with this work. Public Health Order number 14, which is a prevalent piece of a document that we need to be aware of what it says and how we're implementing it and working with it in the district. Looking at some of our COVID data and mitigation efforts, the instructional models, which is, I know, a big part of some of the questions that families have with regards to what this looks like for the last quarter of our school year. And then some pieces around school operations, lunch supervision, et cetera, that I know we've received some consistent questions around. And then I did receive questions ahead of time, and I tried to incorporate some of the themes of those questions into the last slide, and then we will open it up for people to ask questions at the end of the webinar. Just to kind of touch base on a few housekeeping things. First of all, as you have questions, please drop them into the Q&A box that is part of this Zoom webinar and type them in. We will be monitoring those throughout the webinar, and then at the end, I and members of our team will go forward and answer those to the best of our ability. If for any reason we don't know the answer to it tonight, we will definitely find that answer and then post that and move that forward so families know the answer to a critical question that was asked this evening. Like I said, please post your Q&A at the bottom of the screen into the Q&A box, and then we will address those at the end. Tonight's webinar is relatively timely. When we set it back in February, it was really meant to be a time frame when we knew the next order was coming out. I had some discussion with a few community members who were just really requesting that we have more forums like this for us to really talk about what's going on in the district. I hadn't done them for a while, partially because we were doing some other communication through Annie's office out to families, but also as we were working forward with kind of reopening plans and some of the things that were in place with our hybrid models and the transition to implementing them this fall. The public health orders really gave us pretty strict parameters that we had to work within. And there were certainly changes that were taking place, but it was not a piece where I felt like I maybe thought that this was the best format for us to bring that forward. As I was thinking about this in the January, February timeframe, I felt, we need to have a conversation with our community and our parents in this format again. We set it in February, knowing that there would be another order coming out effective this week, which there is, but it certainly is also aligned very appropriately with the work and decisions that have occurred this week through our school board meeting on Monday. So the purpose tonight is really for communication to our community and to our families. I'm hoping to add some clarification to some questions that have arisen over the last number of days, and then to open it up for some Q&A at the end. First of all, just to kind of take a look at kind of what's the landscape of where we are at. I just want to acknowledge that the last year has been challenging. I mean, it's been challenging for our kids, our families, our staff, members of our community. I mean, all the different aspects of navigating a pandemic have impacted all of us in very different ways. It was a piece I shared at the school board meeting on Monday that it's hard to believe it's really been an entire year, and it never was, I guess, part of my imagination that this would be something that we would still be navigating to the significant level that we are today. That was naive on my part, obviously, but as we move forward, I just want to acknowledge that we're all coming to our conversations and our space here tonight from really different places. I know my wife and I, we have 5 children. 2 of my children are in the school district. I have one at the intermediate school, one at the high school. I fully have been living and working through all the pieces that you have. Um, our, our family has, just a little background. I have one of my children's a teacher in another district. I have another one that's a frontline worker in the Waunakee area. And I also have another child in college. And all of our experiences kind of culminate together. We've had our moments of challenge. We've had our conversations that we talk about how we best service and keep our family healthy, just like many of you have. And I just want to acknowledge that as I've talked to parents and had conversations with all of you over the last year, I do appreciate those discussions, those perspectives. And I just hope we can kind of acknowledge that we've all been through a lot and we're trying now to find ways to move forward. Tonight, we're also talking about education. And the one thing I wish I could provide to you tonight is a, a thorough option that addresses absolute everybody's wishes and dreams. Unfortunately, in the place that we are sitting today and still navigating some of the pieces of the pandemic and trying to look at how we can deliver education, there's just not the possibility to meet everybody's wishes that are coming forward. And I'll address some of those in our conversations tonight. But I think that's a piece as educators that we strive to be able to do. And I think that's the hardest part of the work as we move forward. The one thing I can assure you of is that we have learned a lot this year, and we will continue to learn a lot as we continue to move forward with any of our plans for this fall or for this spring, this summer, and going into the fall. We'll continue to adjust from the experiences that we learn. We'll continue to dialogue and listen, working collaboratively amongst us administratively with our staff, et cetera, and looking for those opportunities to adjust our systems moving forward. So I want to just let you know that what you're seeing tonight is certainly where we are as of today. But as we continue to gain perspective, some of those may adjust as we move forward and find ways that we can better meet the needs of our kids. The other piece is just an acknowledgement of our staff. I want to really bring that up tonight because I'm very proud of the work that they've done. They've done an incredible amount of work to really adjust to the shifts that have occurred in our instructional models. And I just ask for your support and patience with them as we continue to make another change here into the fourth quarter. Additionally, as we look at ourselves as a community, I just think we need to look for opportunities where we can kind of build back those things that have been challenging for us over the pandemic, seek opportunities where we can support each other. We've got a great community. And I think as you look over the last year, there's been things that have challenged all of us and challenged us as a community as well. And I just ask for us to continue to look at how we can do that to not only support our school community, but also our larger community as a whole. My last bullet point, I just titled kids. That's why we're here tonight. I mean, the reason I do the work that I do is because I have a love of kids, all kids, your children. I'm a parent who's obviously here to also advocate for my own children. And that's the frame where all of you are here this evening as well. And so as we move forward, we may have some differences of opinion as we move forward, but I please ask you to just kind of consider that we're all here for the same reason, trying to really work forward to the betterment of our children and all of the kids here at Waunakee. So with that, I'm going to move us forward into some of the content for this evening. I want to take just a moment to talk about Public Health Order number 14. So this is put out by Public Health Madison-Dane County. It came out last week and became effective this week. The main difference between Order 13 and 14 is actually my last bullet point, and this is I'm summarizing at a really high level. From a school perspective, it's been a shift from the social distancing mandates to really looking at how you can bring and open up our schools for education and keeping in mind those mitigation efforts to try to navigate school within a pandemic. I've had the opportunity, and members of our team have had the opportunity for the last year to be in multiple calls per week and collaborative sessions with Public Health Madison-Dane County and the representatives who've been there. They've been phenomenal guides to us. They've been people who've helped us to determine the language and what all these orders mean, what we're able to do, and how we can move forward. And as we look at this Public Order 14, I truly believe it is written in the spirit that public health and our county has put a priority to opening schools. They've given us parameters to be able to do that. The language they use is as much as possible. So absolutely, we want to do distancing as much as possible. In many of the areas, we are going to be talking about being less than 6 feet in our schools. And I believe the spirit of the order, per the conversations we've had with public health, is to find those pathways forward that we can bring students into school and mitigate the efforts as far as disease spread as much as we are able to, but also realizing that from a community spread perspective, and as they've learned more through the research, through the pandemic, schools have been a relatively safe place for us to continue to do our work, to expand, and the spread of disease within the schools with certain mitigation efforts, but particularly with masking, hand washing, sanitizing, those things, it can absolutely be managed and we can move forward. Mitigation efforts are a key part of what we're doing. And I know there was a question that a parent asked me about HVAC improvements. We work with North American Mechanical as our HVAC contractor. They have worked with John Kramer, who's our facilities director, to maximize our ventilation, our filtering of our air, the circulation of the air within our classrooms and in our school. We've added an ionization system to our program to help improve in all aspects of our HVAC improvements. Our school board has been very open to making those pieces as those have been brought forward. So to that question, absolutely, that is a key mitigation effort for us. Face coverings is obviously a piece we've had in place since day one. I think it's one of the key things to keeping our students, our staff, and anybody in the schools safe. Our hygiene policies and cleaning policies, again, have been in place since the beginning of the pandemic and our entry back to school. Our daily health check procedure, that's the white forms that you do every day, and our staff does it on an electronic format every morning. I think those are important accountability pieces for us. And as we move forward with further reopening, I just want to emphasize that the importance of really checking our health and checking our children's health as we bring them to school. If they are having symptoms, they're not feeling well, I please ask you to keep them home and to assess it. Is this simply something that is occurring, that they're going to be over within a day, but also trying to just protect against any sort of contacts that we can try to gatekeep COVID out of our schools. Obviously, I'm not naive enough to believe that we can do that 100%. That there will be incidents where we have to navigate that and use our contact tracers appropriately. But we all have a responsibility to try to do that to the greatest extent possible. And I just ask for your continued cooperation there. Close contact determination has not changed. So that is a piece that right now you are deemed a close contact if you're within 6 feet for a cumulative of 15 minutes in a day. So one of the things we have to be very forthright with is, as we bring more students back and we are within that less than a 6 feet parameter, those close contact determinations are still in place. So if a student were COVID positive in a class, our contact tracers would be working with the staff who work there to determine who those children were that would be in a close contact. And that would lead to then a consideration as far as quarantining, et cetera. Our quarantining criteria has had just minimal changes, and it's really around the vaccination that's come more prevalently into our state and into our region. But if you are found to be a close contact, there is a 10-day quarantine period, unless it can be reduced to 7 days with a negative test that shows that you are not disease positive at that point. For those folks who are vaccinated and asymptomatic, then there does not need to be a quarantine if you be deemed a close contact to someone with COVID-19. And also, if you've recently had COVID, there's still a 90-day grace period. So these are all mitigation efforts that we will continue to be diligent with as we move forward with any of the reopening pieces. I think I've had some conversations with folks who've just felt like, well, it's just kind of open the schools and everything's back to normal. And I think that, yeah, there's many things that feel like it's moving in the right direction, but we absolutely still have to be diligent, particularly on the pieces with our hygiene pieces, with our washing our hands and sanitizing, face coverings, and then doing a diligent job with our contact tracing. One question that has come up a number of times in the last few days has been cohorting, because as you start to look at the public health order, it certainly talks about kind of groupings of kids. And the language is cohorting as much as possible. From our perspective, this is the most important piece as far as contact tracing. But as you look at all of our schools and all of our programs, with an overarching kind of goal of public health and the direction within our state to continue to move forward with opening of our schools, there's different levels and different ways that we can cohort our students in our district. In our K-6, primarily K-4, it's homerooms. You get to the intermediate school, 5th and 6th grade, it's our homerooms, plus we have a few electives like orchestra. Those create relatively tight groupings that are pretty easy for us to go back and really know who's in those classrooms. Now we go to the middle school and high school, we do have kids switching classes. And the question I've had is, well, how can that be cohorting if the kids are moving from class to class? I think the most important piece here is you're starting to look at how do our schools operate and what's our instructional program look like? And in the middle school and high school, a comprehensive program for them includes not only their core classes, it's their encore electives, and all those things that make for a breadth of an experience as a student. So when we're looking at from a contact tracing and a cohorting perspective, we are looking at the classrooms that a child would be in, the activities that they would be in. And then if there were a COVID positive case, that's where we start. We do go back to the classrooms that a child would be in. We are talking to the folks who are involved in that class to determine who would have been the close contacts. And then we also have the impacts if they're in other activities associated with the school. We realize, and we want parents to fully realize that one of the pieces for the reopening our schools, bringing more kids in, is that we will potentially have more children who are deemed to be a close contact, which then would require us to move forward with additional kids that would be quarantined. Now, our hope is that as we continue to move forward in the spring, and that with more vaccination and continued COVID leveling of the numbers, that we can minimize this to the greatest extent that we're able to. We've definitely have seen a decrease in the COVID incidence from where we were this fall to the last number of months as we came back into the second semester. I'm going to back up for a second here. So in a few minutes, I will talk about kind of what our COVID numbers is and why we feel like the way we are following up on contact tracing and where our COVID data is, well, why we feel that is in a positive direction for us to continue to open our schools. Now, on Monday night, what we presented to our school board was really a framework for reopening. And what was decided was on April 6th, we would open up with more fully with grades 7 through 12. And on April 12th, we would move with grades K through 6. The reason for the differentiation of those, the 6th is actually our true start to our 4th quarter. And that lines up, I think, well with some of the pieces at our high school and our middle school. And with the K-6, there's just a few other logistical pieces that we wanted some additional time to work through in the event that we needed it. And then also, we don't really run off of a quarter, well, we don't run off of a quarter system at the elementary, run off a trimester. So it wasn't quite the break in the system that we have potentially in a few other areas. Now, each of you as parents should have received this over the last few days, either on Tuesday or Wednesday. Now, for the K-6 folks, you would have received this. There was a survey that was open for you to really select your preference of in-person or a remote option. That closed, I believe, at 4 o'clock today. I've asked my team to keep that open through tomorrow morning. We will be taking a look at that data as early tomorrow morning. But I also knew that we had our webinar here tonight, and if there are things that we say or questions that we answer that cause you to want to change your decision that you've put there, you do have this evening and tomorrow morning to do so. I would also say if there are some questions that come up tonight that we can't fully answer that kind of lay into some of the pieces that that are pertinent to your decision, please reach out to the folks at your child's building to help guide that process. I think our return rate has been extremely fast and significant. And if you haven't filled out the form, there's time to do so yet. But we will be following up with phone calls to those people that we haven't heard of. But generally, these three documents have gone out for our K-6, our 7-8, and our high school. They outline the general premise of what we are looking at with regards to our remote instruction and our in-person models, and talk about some of the pertinent pieces that we feel that parents need to know. So I encourage you to further take a look at those documents, because I think they have quite a bit of information that can help you with getting a picture of what your child's program would look like. At a high level here tonight, what I want to do is just take a little bit to just share with you really what's in those, in case you haven't had a chance to learn about them, or if you are on this webinar and you are coming to us as not a parent but a community member. The instructional model for our kindergarten through 6th grade, so our elementary schools and our intermediate school, it's an all-day, 4 days a week. Wednesdays are asynchronous for planning and collaboration. I've had a number of questions about why Wednesdays are important, why we just didn't open up to 5 days. I think there's a few pieces. One from a operational piece with our staff, where there are some things that we need to work with within our teachers operationally in their work days with regards to planning. We also have a very large piece with collaboration. And this is a really important piece, particularly as we look at collaboration between our teachers of in-person and our remote teachers, and trying to keep those their curriculum and their learning experiences for kids congruent. So those pieces have kept us on the same page across the district from school to school, and also helped us to be and are vital for us as we start to coordinate between our in-person classes and our remote classes as well. As I shared, we do have a remote model here. The remote model that we have at the elementary is designated with a specific remote teacher. At the secondary level, it's a concurrent model where a teacher is delivering to the students in front of them, and also operating through a Zoom experience at the same time. At the elementary, we have a different model where there is a designated remote teacher. We're able to do that at this level because just the nature of how we operate, really within more of a homeroom type of a setting, and students working primarily with one teacher or just a few teachers throughout their day. A question that has come up from a few parents is, well, what's the situation with Encore for our in-person learners? Encore, just so for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, that's our music, art, phy-ed, guidance, world language, those type of programs that our students cycle throughout the week. The model we are looking at right now, it's either being taught in the classroom by the Encore teacher, or in the specific Encore space, such as the art room. I put an asterisk there because there's still a few discussions and a few internal pieces that we have to work out with regards how that looks in every single building. But I would say that the trend right now, and for where we are looking at what we feel would be the best way for us to deliver some of this work would be through the two options that I just listed, through either the teacher going to the homeroom class and teaching the instruction there, or through our children traveling to an Encore specific space like the art room. Another question I've heard about the elementary piece is, could we accommodate like a half-day hybrid model? And unfortunately, I have to tell you, we're just not able to accommodate really a three model option at the elementary level. Um, right now, we will be supporting both the all-day um, 4-day model, and we will be supporting the remote learning option. And it's just not logistically possible then to kind of incorporate in an alternate hybrid. And the concept and the reason for that is, I think part of what some families have looked at is, and they've asked the question is, can we have our day kind of front loaded with all of the kind of core academic pieces, and then encore classes can be offered in the afternoon. So then we can kind of choose how we participate in that model. The hard part with that is, in order for us to provide the encore courses to our families throughout the day, they all can't be lumped into the afternoon. They have to be spread out across the entirety of the day. So the ability to fully embrace like a hybrid model as an option here is just not logistically possible. So I'm sorry that that's not able to accommodate some of the families that have requested it. Another question we've had is, can we move between the models? One of the things that we've had since the very beginning of our elementary program is that we can move from in-person to remote. We ask for a week's notice. We also have to then assess if we have space availability. I think we've been able to accommodate most of our families who've wanted to do that over time, and that option is still available. Unfortunately, we're not able at this point to really support the moving from remote back to in person, or to flip flop between the models throughout the rest of the semester. So if you are in person, you can choose remote, but if you're choosing um, um, the remote, the ability to move back to in person is not available. Now, one thing I want to, as I go into the last bullet point, is that as we start to look at the shifts and as we assess where families want their children to be served in the last part of our school year, we're going to do everything we can to build consistency with classroom assignments. We value that as much as everybody else. We realize that we're trying to minimize transitions for families. Unfortunately, we also realize in some cases that's just not going to be possible. Now, as a point of context, even if at Monday's school board meeting we hadn't changed to a more of a full day approach with all students, we already had a process at the fourth quarter to allow parents to reassess where they would be. In talking to Amy Johnson, as far as where some of that data was coming back, even if we hadn't changed to an all-day model, we were having 250 of our kids who were remote wanting to come back into our hybrid for the last quarter of the school year. So we would have been dealing with shifts and changes regardless of the change in instructional model that was approved on Monday. So that's the case 6 piece. At the middle school, similarly, we have a 4-day week. Wednesdays are asynchronous, but our Wednesdays are used for a multitude of different purposes at the secondary level. They're obviously used for planning and collaboration with staff, certainly, but we've also tried to minimize the impact on taking away from instructional time with our required assessments, our state assessments, for example, and trying to build those in on these Wednesdays. So that is a piece that I believe between now and the end of the school year, there's only, I think, 2 Wednesdays that we're not fully that are going to be more the asynchronous learning pieces, because we are going to be using them for other purposes. Whatever we have a 4-day week, we will also be using those for the full week days of instruction. And then we're also, as we have opportunities, so if on the backside of an assessment, there's additional time in the day, looking at ways that we can also support some of our students and do some of our student outreach to support some of our struggling children. So that's really what the 4-day model looks like. It's very similar at the high school as well. Now, intervention and support has been a piece that has been brought forward, and we're definitely continuing to look and review that. Right now at the middle school, we have that built into our homeroom time to look at that as a specific time where we can touch base and connect in with our kids. The remote learning option, and this is a piece I think we've received a lot of feedback on, because at Monday's board meeting, we didn't spend a lot of time with it. And in hindsight, I wish we'd have taken a little bit more time, because it's definitely not an afterthought to us. We were really focusing on some of the logistics of the in-person model moving forward. But it's definitely been on our minds as far as how we continue to support our remote learning options. So this is a concurrent model like I shared with you before. So we have students in the classroom, the teacher is instructing them while concurrently working with our remote students through Zoom. This is the model we've had as part of our hybrid. It just shifts now as we have more students that are in front of our teacher every day, and then having students also in a virtual place. The feedback we've had is, well, that's a long day. If you're following it through an 8-period day, that's a long time to be on Zoom. And we fully understand that. We're continuing to look at how that can be broken up through instructional practices, et cetera. But there will be times that we anticipate that there will be times for screen breaks, obviously during passing times when kids are moving between classes, during lunch, during homeroom time, and then also if there's work time within the class period, there may be a piece where it's not the live interaction that you see like we're engaged in right now. If you see that there needs to be some additional breaks in the day, and to help your child out, we look forward for that feedback, and we can try to see what we can do to assist with that as we move forward with this model. We realize everybody has a different tolerance for how much time that they can do on Zoom. I know certainly from our perspective, as we spend quite a bit of our meetings in this format, we definitely understand the fatigue that can come along with it. So we're cognizant of that moving forward. We stayed with the concurrent model here because I think our other model would have been an asynchronous piece, and just kind of where we started the year and making that shift at this point to a different model for our remote learners, we didn't feel was in our best interest. So we realize that there are some things that we will continue to work through, and we are obviously going to be committed to serving your children who choose the remote option at a high level, and also supporting them with realizing kind of what their day looks like with regards to their time on Zoom. And high school has a very similar piece, the same answer for the 4-day week. Our Wednesdays are built for the collaboration. The planning piece is also the required assessments and the 4-day weeks. And then also, again, for student support opportunities. Intervention and support at the high school right now is being built into the class periods. We run 90-minute blocks. So part of that block, I think you can see here, even for our remote students, it'll give them a little bit of a break as far as we start to look at how we can run some of our intervention time during our class period, so that we're not utilizing the whole 90-minute block for just straight up delivery of content, but breaking it out so that we have opportunities to interact with our students and to be of assistance and support. We'll continue to be reviewing kind of how we can support our kids through this, but this is certainly a piece that we want to be able to support those children in front of us, as well as those in our remote learning option. And again, the same type of piece that I talked about with our middle schoolers. The high school doesn't run an 8-period day, they run a 4-period block, a little bit longer block times, but there will be certainly times for the breaks during those transition periods between classes, the lunch, and then obviously during some of those interactive and intervention times per each class period. I'm going to jump into a few things that are just a little bit more specific from a logistical and operational standpoint. And one of them that has come forward is lunchtime. And it's been a question as far as, are there concerns about lunch moving forward? Certainly it's a little bit higher risk activity because you have students who are unmasked during that activity. And just really generally, what's our plan? How are we going to do that? How do we feel comfortable with that, with the number of kids that we have, and what's our plan moving forward? So at a K-6 model, we're generally, it's a little bit different of a model for each of the levels. We're able to cohort by our homerooms, and we'll also have all of our kids facing in the same direction. Generally, they will be seated, I guess think of it as with a 3-foot distance between them on a their lunch tables. Um, the lunchroom, the gym, and some other classrooms may be used at different times for the delivery of lunch. We feel comfortable with the 3 feet piece, one, because our students are a bit younger. We also feel that we will have a great deal of supervision that will be part of our lunch periods. And our kids at that grade level they're not in the lunchroom for that long of a period of time. They usually are eating and then I'm heading out for some piece of a recess, of which we would also have kids kind of cohorted in zones. So from our perspective and looking at what other districts have done who have been more fully open and serving lunch over the course of the pandemic, we generally feel that this is a model that has been successful in other places. Um, Public health does allow you to actually have kids facing each other. They articulated that on our call this morning, but we felt that to be a degree of higher level of safety, having kids facing the same direction per feedback we got from our medical advisory committee was prudent. At the 7th and 8th grade level and at the 9 through 12 level, a little bit different scenario. At the 7th and 8th grade level, we do have lunch tables that are rectangular in shape. Again, we'll have kids sitting 6 feet apart facing one direction. And then we'll also be having 8-foot folding tables that will have 2 people per table. We'll have these set up in the lunchroom, the gym, to service our kids. We also are looking at some level of an assigned seating place. So we know this is like going back to our contact tracing. We've recently learned about some other districts that have had experience with really a process to assess like a QR code system where they can use their mobile device or their Chromebook, et cetera, to really kind of log in so that we know exactly who is sitting close to each other in the event that we have to contact trace anything because of lunch. Our 9-12 students, it's very similar. We'll be using primarily the 8-foot folding tables because our lunch tables are round, and we felt that going every other seat and kids around a table, particularly given the socialness, the socialization part that's often part of our high school lunch program, that the safest route for us to go would be to have kids facing the same direction and sitting at different shaped tables. Again, we're looking at the QR code system and also assigned seating or some level to track our seating. And then the high school also has an open campus, so there may be some students who are leaving for their lunch period, as has happened over time. So from our perspective, and as we've kind of vetted these pieces out, amongst us have asked questions of public health, have had conversations with our medical advisory group. We feel that we can deliver this in a safe manner. Another question that has come up is with regards to supervision and volunteers. And I first of all want to put out a thank you to all the folks who have stepped forward. I believe we have over 200 people who've stepped forward and have stated their willingness to volunteer in different capacities across our 6 buildings. Now, the volunteer process, and I think the concerns that have come forward is really are the folks coming in, is there going to be a vetting process, a training process for them? I mean, absolutely. We're a district that's had and utilized volunteers significantly pre-COVID. So at this point, this is really not going to be a volunteer in the sense of how we've had it in the past, where it's in the classroom helping small groups of students. We really need help with just some of the operational pieces. So there will be a training and orientation piece. We need to make sure we are addressing things like confidentiality, not taking pictures of kids and things that are happening at school. Those are all very important, but we'll also be running our background checks. Our folks who'll be volunteering will primarily be doing some supervisions or helping us with logistics, like potentially, I'm just going to use an example, setting up or tearing down tables. Some of those things that may be of assistance for us to kind of keep our operational pieces moving forward, provide some supervision and additional eyes within our playground, in our lunchrooms, those type of things. Everybody will be masked, there's distancing, and just as we have with our staff and our students, there'll be a wellness check process. So we are taking this very seriously as far as trying to make sure that our volunteers are not only safe, but also that this is a safe environment and something that we are doing with regards to bringing people in for their assistance in our schools. But we certainly appreciate the willingness for people to help us out here. Now, there were a few questions that were sent in ahead of time. So what I tried to do was address some of them through the presentation. And then there were others that I wanted to just added here at the end, just so I could talk through them. The first one was with regards to ventilation. Now, what have we done to change our ventilation system? As I've shared with you earlier, we do work with North American Mechanical, and we've maximized our ventilation system throughout our district. We've done that throughout the year, and we'll continue to support that through the end of the school year. We have filtering, outside air, all of those pieces that have been recommendations to us. We've worked with with North American Mechanical. They've been a great partner in helping us to really make sure that our ventilation system is at the top level of performance and addressing the issues that have been recommended for ventilation systems in schools. Another question I've received is with regards to summer school and fall. And kind of, I think the general question was, well, what's that going to look like? And how are, what do we predict for the fall? Well, I think part of when we look at kind of the return to school, as we do for this spring period, I think that gives us kind of a precursor of what summer and fall can look like. Now, certainly there are things that are contingent upon what happens within our pandemic, but if things continue to move forward, as I anticipate they will, particularly with greater numbers of vaccinations coming to the general public, hopefully in the near future, we'll be able to further operate and manage our summer school in much the way that we have in the past, using many of the mitigation protocols I've talked about here tonight. And then as we move into the fall, I believe that there will probably still be some things that we have to do from a mitigation standpoint, but certainly we're trying to position ourselves to make this transition at this point in the school year so that we can be in a strong position in the fall. The one thing that I think we will be assessing, we have a group right now who's looking at or an internal broad-based group of staff and faculty and administration looking at our remote learning options. We realize that there are going to be some needs for that in the fall. It's the model of what that will look like is something that we are vetting out within a further study, because we feel that one of the pieces coming out of the whole COVID experience is needing to really look at how we deliver um, online learning for those families that have found that to be helpful in their children's experience. But I can't tell you what that model would look like. That's being vetted out through work we're doing this spring. Student mental health has been a piece that has come up um, quite frequently throughout the pandemic. We certainly acknowledge that there are challenges that I think we all experience, from adults to children. If there, we've done some of the mental health screeners with that you've seen come home, and I just encourage you that if you are seeing things with your children that are concerning to you as far as their mental well-being, their mental health, please refer them to our student services staff. We've got a great set of counselors, social workers, psychologists who will be very happy to be able to help and interact and work with you as a family on any of the health issues that you might be experiencing. And we'll see how we can be of assistance in trying to support them in their learning and where they're at with their participation in school. Another question I've received is, why return now? We're already at a point in the year where we're coming into the fourth quarter of the year. It seems like a lot of disruption. I think that's really the gist of the couple of questions I received on this. I think there's two things. I think one is, or a few things. Uh, Certainly there's latitude now by our public health order that allows us to do it. I think there's encouragement through what's happening with the pandemic to further open schools and programs. You're seeing more opening within our communities too, with gathering sizes that can take place, and how businesses are opening up. And definitely on top of that is a drive to start to bring students back to school, because we realize the importance of that. I realize we're looking at the last number of weeks of school, but it's, in my mind, that's still 9 weeks. I think that's a significant amount of time for us to still be working with our kids. As I shared at the school board meeting the other night, we kind of have to make decisions on do you move forward with further reopening and bringing kids back, or do you stay kind of in the models we were? Through vetting out of that, we've decided to move forward with bringing more of our students back, the value that we feel that that can bring to the children. And then also that being a piece that positions us well for the summer school, and also for things that we can learn and make that transition before the fall. An additional question was with regards to snack break at the elementary. I think this was a question of, is there going to be one because the child is coming back? They've maybe had some of those things in their experience throughout their school year this year and over the last year. We are looking at being able to do that at the elementary school. We have some students who are on our breakfast program, and that'll be lined up with our snack break at the elementary, and that would take place within the classroom. A curriculum question that has come up is with regards to covering of curriculum, and feeling like, because of the hybrid models we've been in, what are we doing to catch students up? One of the things I think our staff have done a really good job of this year is, even though we're in a different instructional model, I don't believe that they're giving up a lot of curriculum in their process. They've identified the essential learning outcomes, or the essential pieces that kids need to learn to be as successful as they move to the next level. I think they've done a really good job with that. They've delivered instruction through their model to the kids, and then they've had activities that have helped to broaden and expand that. We had a presentation at, I believe, our February board meeting where we talked about student achievement. Certainly, there are some kids that we are tracking and making sure that we can help support them during this time. But we've also found that we feel like we are addressing the primary curricular needs that are needed for our kids to be successful moving forward. Now, that being said, we're also incorporating some things into our summer school that will be available to families to consider, to look at how we can help support some of their skills over the summertime. I think we've added a few of those pieces in last summer as well, and we'll continue to do that this summer too. We do a lot of formative assessment, or continued assessment of our kids, and to see how they are performing throughout the year. And that's a piece we've done throughout the pandemic, and also been responsive to the kids that we feel that have needed additional attention. Going into next year, where we'll be keenly aware of looking for those, any gaps that we see, and then working to intervene as necessary, and working with our families accordingly. The next question was, what's the threshold for school to revert back to a hybrid or other model? I think really where we're at is similarly as we've been throughout the whole pandemic. It's really going to be about contact tracing. It's going to be about number of incidents within a school. I don't think there's really a threshold that we'll be using that's going to tell us that we stay in the current model, or we revert back to a hybrid or fully remote. There was a physician on our public health call this morning who actually was speaking to kind of the recently released CDC guidelines. And it surprised me that the CDC did have guidelines that were really built on level of community spread and what your model for instruction should look like. Because I believe the science has really kind of moved beyond that type of a model. And the physician who was meeting with us in our public health call this morning was really reiterating that it's really more about your mitigation efforts, how you're able to manage the pandemic and within your school, and making really localized decisions. I think all along the pandemic, I think that there's been points, at least I can speak for myself, there was always nervousness as we moved from one model to the next. I mean, last summer, I was nervous when we brought our camp kindergarten kids back. I think we had 60 kids district-wide. And I think back on that now, I mean, certainly we were able to do that successfully, and now we're able to gain confidence that we can bring more students back and do so with caution and safety. But as far as our threshold, it's really going to be about kind of what's happening within our school. How many incidents are we having? Are we able to staff our programs? I think that's going to be improved, certainly with our staff being vaccinated. So from a threshold piece, it's really more of an experiential, what we're experiencing at a given time versus any sort of hard threshold. The last question that I had that I'm able to answer here is with regards to mask breaks. And that's certainly something we've had some conversations about. We've kind of pushed that off to public health to see if they had any any pieces that they have guidance on that. We absolutely know that we've got to figure out kind of how we can give some kids a break with their masking. I mean, that's a piece that we as adults are dealing with as well. We look at the school board meeting on Monday night. I was 6 hours with a mask. It's a long time without having a time to take a momentary break. I think there's opportunities certainly when you are at lunch and some of those activities that will allow for that. But yeah, what we are, that's a piece that we'll continue to review and work with our staff as far as how we can do that safely. So I think that comes to the end of the questions, at least that I had, was supplied prior to tonight's meeting. And I know that there are some questions in our Q&A. All right. Okay, question is, what's the challenge with moving from remote to in-person? I think generally it's kind of just managing our classes and managing the class sizes within each of our buildings. I mean, that is I don't want to minimize the impact of kind of the data we get back for people coming back into our models, and the act of trying to then create our classrooms and our situations as far as how many students are in a room. So that's really a direction as far as a logistical piece, and also trying to make decisions with regards to how we can manage the kids that we have within the classroom, and doing so at the greatest safety level, and also at the greatest level of not creating disruption as far as needing to shift classrooms during the process. So it's just a piece that from moving from in-person to remote is certainly something we can generally support, but trying to move from the remote to in-person, it's just too hard logistically for us to be able to navigate that back and forth. This one is for the kids that have been all virtual. How will their schedule and location of their classes be communicated, 8th grade specifically? How will their schedule and location of their classes be communicated? Tim, I'm going to lead on you a little bit here. I believe that they will have a class schedule that'll be provided to them, but can you help add a little bit of light to the question that was posed?
Yeah, Randy, I'll do my best. So for those of you that have children at the middle school, we're asking that you respond to the form by noon on Monday. We're hoping for a very high response rate on that, because starting at noon on Monday, our office staff at the middle school will start following up to make sure we get responses from anybody that did not complete the form. Once that is done, students will be receiving a schedule in Infinite Campus. But I think it's important to point out, unlike the elementary level, there are going to be no scheduling shifts occurring at either the middle school or high school. If a student is currently in virtual and they're moving to in-person, they should be in the same sections they're in as of today. The only difference is, and these sections will be running at the same time. So this will be a matter of just moving from participating virtually to participating during the day. Now, what will change, I shouldn't have said same time. As we move to the full day, the schedule will bump out. So there will be no change in sections, but we will be updating all of the students, all of the parents on the times as the periods are expanded and we move to 8 periods a day versus 4 periods a day. This would be true for both virtual and in-person students. And if that's not a complete enough answer, drop a clarifier in the chat and I'll take another go at it.
Thanks, Tim. All right, the next question is, when can we expect to know our child's new teacher assignment? That's a piece after we get all of our information in from the survey data. We'll be moving forward with that as soon as we're able to. Amy, do you have a general concept as far as timing, as far as what that might look like?
I had my finger on the cursor for type answer to that question as soon as you started talking. Right. But no, I don't have a date, but as Randy mentioned, it's a complex process now when we're getting all the information and, striving really hard to keep students with teachers and then juggling the need for, in-person and remote requests. So we know the survey is closing today. We're going to do any follow-up tomorrow. We're going to meet and start right away on that on Monday morning. So I don't have a date for you.
Give you a hard date, but I can guarantee you we'll be moving that as soon as we're able to. I know that that's a big piece. That's a big part in my household as well. So, um, question about lunch. I think there's two of them here. How will we be doing hot lunch, particularly at the middle school and high school? It won't be the same type of cafeteria experience that we've had in the past. We're trying to kind of mitigate the a process that's probably more of a take and go style type of a lunch. But we're not going to be able to operate the same type of cafe situation where we have all the a la carte options that we've had in the past. Tim, do you have anything to add to that? I know that you've been part of the discussions at the middle school and high school with regards to that.
Yeah, I'll do my best there, Randy. Really, like you said, the goal is to reduce congestion and improve flow. We may be having multiple serving or pickup areas. The goal is really for as much touchless serving and grab and go as possible.
Yep, thank you. Question about contact time at the high school allows for clubs, music lessons, makeups, etc. For those of you who don't know what contact time is, that's a period that we have under normal operation times. It's a time that we built into our schedule at the high school where we are able to do some of the intervention pieces. And then we also allow some of our clubs and orgs and other pieces to take place. Right now, that what we've done is we've been reviewing kind of the whole contact time piece. The current plan is allowing for some of those interventions, which was really the gist of an impetus for why we do contact time, and building that into the schedule per each block at the high school. Certainly the clubs and the orgs and all of those things are not canceled. They certainly are able to continue to meet prior to us having contact time, which is still a relatively new concept within our system. It's only been the last number of years we've had it. Our clubs and orgs and all of those things met outside the school day. So there is still those opportunities for those clubs and pieces to move forward. But I also know, as we've shared, that as we continue to vet things out and move forward, we'll be looking at how we can best serve our kids through the type of activities that were part of contact time. I think that was another question about contact time. All right, why are we bringing kids back to full days? These are two big shifts, all kids and full days. I think there's two pieces. I think as we've looked at bringing back all of our students, I think what we are feeling is that we feel that there's latitude to be able to do that safely based on the research we've dove into as far as how we can mitigate operating schools within a pandemic, and things that we've learned and things that have been vetted out not only by other districts but also research-wise across the country this last year. We feel that being able to open our doors more fully has been supported by public health. So that's one of the reasons that we've looked at it. The second part is you look at the last 9 weeks of school. That's still a quarter of our school year. We feel that that's an important piece to be able to continue to service our kids and to start that transition that we do need to do at a point in time to start moving us back in the direction of having more students in our buildings. So that's generally why we've done that. I think there was a question about 3 weeks time to prepare. I think there's certainly a piece that we've been thinking about this for quite a while as far as what these moves might look like. We're still working on obviously some of the finer points to it. And I think the questions that you're bringing up tonight are ones that are also on our minds and on our staff's minds and our building administrators, as far as how we are trying to kind of grow and learn and continue to kind of put the finer points to these plans as we move forward. What you're seeing for this evening and what we're talking about are what we have at this point. We've encouraged our staff to bring forth ideas as far as how we can further improve upon some of these ideas, that particularly some of the ones that I think some of you have brought forward tonight. So I think those things will continue to grow. All right. If all or most of the students opt to go in person, can the district support that? Yeah, that's a great question, because we've had that conversation. I believe we are able to support it. I mean, certainly we'll assess that as far as when we get all of our survey pieces back. But I do see a trend right now that a lot of families are choosing to send their children back to school. It's a little bit different building to building. But we have to, as we kind of work through those logistics, we'll make assessments as far as how we can manage the classrooms and do that. We have parameters. We have pieces that we feel are important as far as how we can keep kids safe. We feel kids being in a classroom with a mask, good hygiene practices, and instructionally, we feel that can be done safely. I think that's been shown over time as far as how we can operate as a school. So I do believe that's the piece. The pieces that we've also tried to mitigate our risk are things like lunch, where we are trying to really go above and beyond what's even required of us in order for us to really maintain the safety and some of the comfort levels of our families, our kids, and our staff. So kind of going to the table model and trying to do more of a different way of delivering lunch has all been part of that efforts to really keep our students safe as they return to school. But pieces within the classroom, I feel comfortable, and I think that the research points out that spread and mitigation within a classroom has and can be done safely. For freshmen who are in the virtual model all year, are there any plans for a school tour to better navigate the building after returning to in-person learning? Oh, that's a great question. I know when we brought our students back at the semester, there was definitely, we had staff at the door who helped our freshmen who really, that was some of their first experiences kind of coming back to the building. We'll definitely share that perspective with Mr. Borowski, and I'll share it with our other principals as well, that just acknowledging that as we have kids coming back, that for some of them, it'll be their first experience coming into the building and to support that. We saw that at the semester, and I anticipate we will continue to address that and support those kids as they come back at this point too. Question is, again, this one's around a little bit longer question with regards to kind of the whole distancing and cohorting piece. I mean, and I guess my answer to that and the difference between DHS and CDC, CDC's guidelines, to be honest, were very surprising to me, because they're not specific. I mean, they're good guidelines for all the pieces that are coming forward that we have to be considering. We also are looking at what's happening within our state and within our public health department. Through the research that's been out there, through different collaboratives that have been studying kind of school reopening pieces, Public Health Madison-Dane County has been a little bit more outreaching and with the goal to further open up schools. In working with them, then certainly mixing students it adds to the complexity of things like contact tracing. But I think the biggest piece that we have to be careful of is making sure that we are able to contact trace in the event that there's an issue. But it's also a matter of how do you mitigate and what other pieces do you have in place? Some of those goals, those guidelines for CDC are also written for places that don't have the ventilation systems. They don't have some of the cleaning and hygiene abilities that we've been able to very fortunately put in place for our school and our students. So they're written for a much broader audience. I think when you take a look at all of the different pieces that we've been able to move forward with this year, I think we can check off almost every one of the boxes. The one we haven't done, and this was purposeful, was the rapid antigen testing for symptomatic individuals. We didn't do that because we already do a symptom checker for students and staff to come to school. So that's our first level of defense. And the antigen testing that's available in our county that we could use is only for kids who would then become symptomatic during the day. So we didn't feel like we would move ahead with that. But that's really the only mitigation effort that we don't have in place. So from a respect of trying to really support our kids moving forward, we feel that there's direction and support from public health to be able to further open schools. And the pieces that we are trying to make sure that we do well are the mitigation efforts that I talked about earlier tonight. Just reading here. The next question is really about the change from the hybrid, where we did have distancing and no lunch. Why didn't we just simply look at going to a longer day under that model? I think that was definitely a piece that was discussed and taken a look at. But I think as we again started to have conversations about where we saw the risk of disease spread within our community and within the conversations we've had within our public health realms, I guess we felt that we felt we had really a direction to be able to make one more shift this school year. And that was a conversation I had with our school board on Monday as well. At that point, I think what we felt was that we were able to, given the amount of efforts and what we're seeing with regards to COVID specifically within our school, it has been at a level that is very, very low. And we felt that this was something that, given our contact tracing and all of the other pieces, we felt that being able to bring students back more fully would allow them some additional time in their classrooms and face-to-face with teachers. And also we realized then that we have to then support our remote children as well. And some of those, the expanded curriculum pieces that we were able to provide, we felt that there was a benefit to putting that as part of the model and using that as also a piece as we kind of bridge ourselves to the end of the year and moving forward into the next school year. All right, Tim, I'm going to ask for your help on this one. This one's a little more of an instructional piece. As far as about if my child is staying remote, how do we ensure that they're getting enough attention? Can you describe a bit more in detail of kind of what that model looks like?
Sure. For the middle school or high school student that's staying remote, they will be participating concurrently with the students who are on site. Now, depending on what's going on in the class, if there is kind of a differentiated support block at the end of class where there's nothing, where each student might be working independently with some support by the teacher, they may have a chance to take a break in their Zoom. But what we would say is the teachers, even with this adjustment to the schedule, there are certainly going to be opportunities on some of the Wednesdays where we have testing. The testing will be done by the later afternoon. We do have 2 open Wednesdays still. Those are potential support times. But really, if a student, if your student or you feel they are not making satisfactory progress or their needs aren't getting met, our perspective is this is very similar to how we would handle it in any other year. Reach out first to the child's teacher and express your concerns. We have a great staff. You should find them responsive to that request and be able to to work out some kind of accommodation to better meet your child's needs. We recommend always starting with your child's teacher first before moving along to building administration. If that answer is not enough and you need a little more or clarification, if you could drop a follow-up into the Q&A, we'll definitely look for it.
Thanks, Tim. The next question is, how do we handle passing time? We've certainly, the passing time at the middle school and high school is from kids moving from class to class is definitely a piece that we are aware of as far as kids moving in the hallways. We've had them doing that for the last number of weeks. Obviously, now we'll have some additional students in the hallways. We don't feel like that will create, I mean, when you look at the contact tracing piece, it's within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more. So we don't feel that we will be addressing any additional close contact pieces there, because we also need to be educating our kids about what it looks like as we kind of operate within our school setting during this time. They've been very good to work with. I mean, I think that's a piece we've got to give our kids credit, that they understand and they want to be at school, and that they are able to maintain these things and to help us make sure that they're successful. So it'd be through supervision of our kids in the hallways, getting them into class, and then having them move on with their routines. But I think part of that is this training them and incorporating what are the protocols that we have in being in school. It's certainly not a piece where we can just kind of expect them to follow those without having some conversation and some education about it. That's a piece that our teachers have done a good job with at the very beginning of us bringing more students back, particularly at the middle school and high school at the semester, and that'll continue as we continue to move forward. Next question is, what happens when a school gets shut down? Concern again about the mixing. I understand the question, certainly, and it's a piece that we take very seriously. We do feel that we can operate in a more open concept. We've certainly have talked to some of our colleagues in other districts that have been able to do so successfully, and we feel that we've put into place all of our mitigation efforts to do that. The follow-up question is, how much money has the village of Waunakee spent? It's really not the village, it'd be the school district. So we did have a referendum this past fall that has been very, very helpful in helping us with our mitigation costs. I mean, certainly, I think that referendum was $2.1 million. It's a 5-year referendum, so we have those dollars for this year and the next 4 years afterwards. Certainly, there's going to be some continued pieces that we have to support throughout the next number of years, and anticipate that any costs that we are bringing in, we're able to cover through there. We also have received some of the federal dollars that have come through the different stimulus packages. There's some additional funds that will be coming school districts' way to particularly help as we incur some of the costs that are associated with this reopening.
And Randy, I'd just like to add one little aspect on there for our community member asking the question. Every year with graduation, we rent approximately $1,200. I want to be clear here, $1,200 worth of temporary furniture rentals just for graduation. Some of the furniture we are purchasing to support what we're doing beginning in April is going to permanently remove the need for that annual expense. So it won't totally cover the cost, but we will have some ongoing cost savings as a result of what we're doing here for the pandemic.
Right. The next question is with regards to spring break coming up. Are there any concerns with regards to that? This is a great question, because we've had concerns every time we've had a break. We had a concern after Thanksgiving. We had a concern after the winter break. We certainly will be watching what happens after spring break as well. My hope is that we're able to kind of experience what we did after Thanksgiving and the winter break. November was a huge spike in COVID. I mean, that was really a piece, if you recall, we had for the reopening plans at that time that we put a pause on. And as a result, our experience afterwards was not what we expected. We did have this conversation came up at our public health call this morning. Right now, there are no limitations on travel from our public health department. We are continuing to follow through and utilizing those guidelines as we move forward. And we're hoping that that as we come out of spring break, that we're going to have a similar experience. Now we do have about a week break before the high school, middle school comes back post spring break, and we have a period of about 2 weeks where our elementary is. Our quarantine times are 7 and 10 days. So I would think if there are any issues that are coming up, we would start to see them in those days after spring break, and hopefully we can mitigate any of those incidences from coming into our school. Could the district offer antigen testing for asymptomatic students as a staff, as a screening tool? Right now, the antigen testings that we have available to us is for symptomatic folks. It's through a process through public health and through the UW. I think what you're talking about is kind of a type of system that we've done that's happened at like the UW. Right now, that's not a piece that's readily available to us. Oops, got my thing. Well, if everything continues in the right direction, can we assume fall won't include an asynchronous day off Wednesday? That is my hope. So that is, I think that is the direction that we are hoping as we get into next fall, that we can continue to find our way back to what we view as more normal operations. Will you send kids home if they appear sick, even with non-COVID-like symptoms? Absolutely. I mean, that's a real important piece. Is if there are kids that are showing symptoms at school, even of things that are non-COVID related, we're absolutely wanting those kids to be home and in a place that's where we're not mitigating risk of any sort of disease within our school. So absolutely, any kids that are having symptoms or not feeling well, we will be sending home. What do the teachers think of the shift in schedule? I think generally, I think that this is a big shift. I mean, that's what I shared at the very beginning of this webinar is this is a big change for our staff. There's concerns as far as how we kind of move forward with some of the instructional pieces. They've had numerous changes throughout the course of the year, and this adds to that piece. I do feel that we have a phenomenal staff who will do a good job moving forward through it, but definitely that as we kind of look and navigate the shifts, the change process, definitely that there's some kind of concerns and dialogue around that. This is a question about graduation. Find a way to broadcast graduation this year and all years to follow. I guess, Bill, I'm going to ask you a question. If you can just kind of drop in the chat, if you're asking for us to broadcast it and record it like we did in the past, because I know one of the things that Brian Borowski is trying to look at is obviously we have the ability with larger grouping sizes now and being able to have 500 people in an outside gathering. We are looking to try to be able to do some of our graduation pieces outside. We'll see what subsequent health orders are, if they can further open that up even further, which is a possibility. We may have to do kind of multiple type of programs, but I guess I think your question was more about are we going to like record it and kind of have that type of a piece? I think that we're looking at something like that for this year, but we really haven't kind of finalized what our plans are for graduation yet. I guess what question is, do we feel that we are situated legally to defend ourselves against guidelines, going against guidelines? Well, I first of all don't believe we're going against any guidelines. We've had very specific conversations with public health about what we're doing, and the answers that they've provided us are supportive that we have latitude to do the type of reopening that we are. If we weren't in that place, I wouldn't be bringing that recommendation forward. Um, um, Additionally, I think there's been pieces that have passed with regards to litigation with school reopening, and that those pieces can't move forward. I think there's been some protections there legislatively, but as far as the orders in place, we were very careful that as we move forward with anything that we're proposing, that we're doing so that's within the guidelines that were allowed per public health. Are you competing both state and nationwide background checks on volunteers? Um, wow, now you stumped me. I believe we do have a comprehensive piece. I think when the last time we reviewed that, it does do both state and nationwide background pieces. It's definitely a piece I'll follow up with our HR department tomorrow with your question, but I'm going to answer yes to that I believe it does do both. The state and the nationwide. It's not just a simple CCAP type search. It's definitely a piece that we purchase as we move forward with a more thorough background checking process. All right. Annie, do we see any other questions?
I just see one more in the Q&A here.
Last question is, have parents given donations to the school district over the last 2 months? There's definitely been parents who've donated things over the last few months. I think that right now the largest donation that we're seeing coming just recently this week is the call of people's time to help us with some of the things that we need assistance with. Monetary donations from individuals over the last few months, I would say hasn't been significant, but over the course of the pandemic, we've had a number of donations that have helped to offset our costs, at least to some degree, with our helping to support food insecurities for some of our families that need more support with our free and reduced lunch programs, etc. All right. Any other questions?
I don't see any others. Those of you who had questions that we could not answer, we will follow up tomorrow with answers to your questions.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, I just want to say thank you to all of the folks who are on tonight. I think we had over 120 some people here. This was hopefully this was helpful. If there's things that are coming up that are very specific to your child, I ask that you kind of direct some of those pieces to your buildings where your children are supported. Particularly as you start looking at things like our mental health and all those other pieces that I think are very specific to an individual child, we would be able to support them at a more personal level at that level. So, thank you for dropping that into the Q&A. We'll definitely follow up with that. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate all of your time. Have a good night.